This is the Lord's Prayer in the Aramaic tongue, as Jesus spoke it over 2,000 years ago. أعون دوشميا نتقداش شماخ تأتي ملكوتاخ نهوي صبيانخ إكنا دوشميا أبر حولا لحمة سمكانا يومنا واشوق لان حوبين إكنا داب حنان شوقا لحيوين لا تعلن لإنسيونا إلا بصن من بيشة مثول دي لاخي ملكوثة حي لو تشبحته العالم عالمين Amen. Well, one thing real quickly, the 800 number for the foundation, if any of you uses that, is not working. So if you need to get a hold of Lynn or the foundation by phone, please use this number, which is just a local US number. It's 678-945-4006. And I think it's available on our noohra.com website. But the 800 number, we're having trouble with it, and we're trying to solve that. Okay. Well, I promised last time I spoke to answer questions that came as I was closing. So a question came. It was a statement of New Testament points out Satan's influence on earth. Many are too, or many identify with it. This word of Yeshua is also not often discussed. Please share your perspective. And the person who submitted this mentioned John 15:20. Actually, I think it's John 14:30, which reads as such. Let me go back to John. Okay, John 14:30 reads as such. Hereafter I will not talk much with you, for the prince of the world comes, and yet he has nothing against me. So this is Jesus talking to his disciples. And he's talking about the prince of the world. So in this case, I know the question is about Satan. So if you haven't been with Dr. Erico talking about Satan, there's just go to our YouTube website channel and do a search on Satan, because he's done at least multiple sessions on that. And going into the history of Satan all the way from like the Hebrew Bible into the New Testament and into what religion made Satan be. But in this verse that was used, the prince of the world, now you can interpret that as as Satan, because some people refer to it that way. But what Jesus is talking about was the Roman emperor. So throughout Jesus's ministry, the bad guy was Rome. The Rome, but by the Jewish people and the people who were occupied under Roman occupation really suffered with overtaxation, with just persecution. But at the time of Jesus, at least the Jewish people had worked with the Roman government to create some kind of autonomy and control over the religious manners. That's why when Jesus was later arrested and tried, the Roman governor said, this man has done nothing. I see no fault in this man's actions. So, and he washed his hands from condemning Jesus, ended up condemning him and killing him, because the Jewish people had no authority to do it themselves, but they could manipulate the politics. So, and I will get into, because I don't like to talk about politics. And last week when I was speaking, some people got upset because they thought I was bringing political issues. I was not endorsing any political system, as I don't endorse any worldly system. And I'll get tonight, that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about Jesus and duality and the worldly systems versus the kingdom of heaven. But back to the verse. So Jesus knew, and throughout his ministry, he was being pulled into that political struggle. And at his time, that political struggle was real. Even one of his own disciples, one of the ones he named, Simon's, the Zealot. Okay, the Zealot was a title that was not good at all, almost as bad, or if not worse, than the Messiah. That's why Jesus did not want the title the Messiah when he was um, teaching in Galilee. So who are the Zealots? The Zealots were a group of disgruntled, unhappy with occupation, Jewish sect. They were more like gangs who used weapons to fight the Romans. And there was constant rebellion in Galilee and in Judea. And the Zealots were wanted by the Romans. And the Jewish authority didn't like them because they messed with the agreements with the Romans. So the Jewish authority did not want anything to rock the relationship with the Romans. It was good for them. They were collecting taxes. They could practice their religion, and they were working side by side with the Romans. And a lot of the people were not happy with that because they felt that, working with a pagan nation, and throughout the history of Judaism, the people and the prophets constantly spoke about how if you start working with these pagan governments and lose your way of God, the way of the law, that's the way the Jewish people refer to it. You're going to always be under the power of somebody else. Somebody bigger is going to come over you. If you find your way to God and start doing all the right things, you'll never deal with occupation. Everybody will leave you alone and you'll live in peace. That was the philosophy, the thought process that the Jewish prophets had throughout the history of what we call today Judaism, the religion of God, according to Abraham and everybody who followed in his footsteps. So then back to John, and what Jesus was saying is that, I'm gonna, that the prince of the world, the biggest political power that had, over them, which was the Roman emperor, had nothing against me. I never broke his law. And if we read Jesus's life, I mean, just bits and pieces of it, I'm going to go to Luke 20, 20 through 26. So here we are, 20 through 26. So they sent spies. This is I'll go on 19. The high priest and the scribes sought to lay hands on him that very hour, but they were afraid of the people, for they knew that he had spoken this parable against them. So he had just given a parable to kind of get under their skin. So Jesus was controversial. Last week when I spoke, when I put it on YouTube, I titled it "Jesus Turned the Tables," and I talked about how his humanity and his belief systems, and more than anything, his ethics, his understanding of what the kingdom of God is and is to be, really motivated him. Jesus had no duality. He had a clear vision of what it's going to take to give us happy life and make the world a better place, and bring in the presence of God. And his God had no duality. If we study the Hebrew Bible, God had duality. Sometimes God was brought good, and sometimes when things went bad, people blamed it on God, and basically because people lost their way of God. That's why I'm saying that's their basic philosophy. You do what God wants you to do, life will be good. You veer away, you get punished. And often you get punished by God. Jesus never said that. Jesus was always about God is like a parent who loves all his children. That's why we have the parable that we call the prodigal son, the man who had two sons, the lovely son, older son who stood by his dad, and the young son who took his inheritance and wasted it on women and went and lived with the Gentiles and so forth. But at the end of the story, the father embraces both kids and comforts both of them. The one who was upset because his brother messed up things and he was all good, and the one who made the mistakes and came back to the family fold. So Jesus was telling us that God's kingdom has absolutely, God does not keep a balance. God is always loving. So now the priests and the scribes, so this is the Jewish authority. Think of it as government. Okay, so you're working with a governmental system, with a political system that had interests and economic interests and so forth. And they came to him, so they sent him spies disguised as righteous men to ensnare him by a word and to deliver him to the judge and then to the authority of the governor. See, they still had to rely on the Roman authority, the people who were representing the emperor, the ruler of this world. That was their guy. So they asked him, saying, "Teacher." And so they're so humble. They're trying to trap him, and there are many episodes where they do that. "We know that you speak and teach truthfully." So they're buttering him up. "And you do not discriminate between men, but you teach the way of God justly," which is all true. So he's like, okay, but he knew where they're coming from. So, is it lawful for us to pay head tax to Caesar or not? Okay, that was it. So remember I told you about the zealots. The zealots were fighting because they didn't want to pay Roman taxes. They felt that, the only tax they should pay is to the temple and to, the Jewish God, not the Romans. So they're trapping him and they're putting him in a tough spot because some of the people who were coming to listen to him were zealots, and the Essenes were around. The Essenes had isolated themselves, but they didn't want anything to do with the Romans, and they felt that if they just keep the good ways, that eventually the Romans will go away or get destroyed by God. So there were a lot of philosophies around the time of Jesus, kind of very similar, but Jesus was aware of the risk of this conflict. And he did not want to fall into the trap of taking the kingdom of God and make it struggle with the kingdoms of the world. He didn't want the spiritual system to fight against the governmental system and political systems and religious systems. He wanted spirituality. He wanted goodness. He wanted humanity, love. He preached love. That was the key. That's why he was known as the Good Shepherd, because he took care of his flock and loved his flock, and he wanted them to do the same. So here they're saying, okay, should you pay tax? If he would have said yes, pay taxes, then he would have been on the Roman side. If he would have said no, the Romans would have snagged him. Those spies would have grabbed him right away and said, okay, yep, we got you. Okay, you broke the law. You said don't pay taxes, you break the law. Same system we have today. You don't pay your taxes, the tax authority will be at your door, taking your house away, taking your car away, and so forth. So he knew he could not break that law. So, but he understood their craftiness and said, "Why do you tempt me?" See, and they were tempting him both, as they're provoking him, and he wasn't about that. Yet he had just kind of slammed them with a parable. "Show me a penny." So he was very practical and quick thinking. "Show me a penny whose image and inscription are on it." They said, "Caesar's." So they immediately, it's obvious. Grab me a dollar right now. It's the president of the United States. It's the currency of the United States. Jesus said to them, "Give therefore to Caesar that which is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. That's Jesus in a nutshell. If you get too involved in the worldly system, and we have to exist in that duality, and I spoke about that also a few weeks ago. That he did tell us those worldly systems will continue to exist. For some odd reason, we can't get away from them. We can't just live in a community where we take care of each other, love each other, not steal from each other, not try to dominate and be mean to each other. So we end up creating these governmental systems. The Jewish prophets warned about it when they installed their first king. The Jewish people, until King, I think it was King Saul, they didn't have a king. They had judges, with judges at the time, that not are our judges today. Judges were basically the equivalent of prophets, and they were considered prophets. They would travel around, solve problems, create peace in communities, and so forth. But they wanted a governmental system because their enemies, mainly at the time the Philistines, had a king. And the king had an army, and he would head that army and come and fight and defeat them constantly. They could not unite without a flag and a king. And they brought in a king, and they created a governmental system. Moses created a religious system. Before Moses, the Jewish people were spiritual people. They basically did what is right based on what Abraham guided them and what the early forefathers of the religion were doing. Be righteous, do the right thing, don't kill, don't envy, don't covet your husband's wife, don't commit adultery, don't violate somebody's property. So a lot of the belief systems were just creating a good community. But then once you formalize it and you put a priest, and then you put a priestly caste, and you put who can touch this and who can do that, you create you separate the spirituality from the people, and you put it in the hands of authority. Governmental systems takes the goodness and puts it up into a government that we expect to serve us. But what the prophets were warning against when the Jewish people wanted a governmental system is that it has its own demands. It's going to create a new layer that you will never be able to escape. And that layer was created, and they developed an army, and they started wanting taxes to feed that army. And then the army took their kids into war, and it just became like all the nations around them, and constantly was failing and split against itself and so forth, because it became political, not just spiritual. So when Jesus said, give to Caesar what's Caesar's and God's what's God's, he was making a statement that was also a constant in his ministry. Jesus spoke since I'm talking about God and money, I'll go to Matthew 6:24. So in Matthew 6:24, and I've used this one before because it comes on the heels of Matthew 5 and 6 are very powerful. 6:24, no man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and like the other. See, this is the general statement. Anytime you have two masters, you're going to favor one over the other. And in this case, Jesus says, or he will honor one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon, wealth. Okay, so he was talking about, and I spoke before, Jesus was not anti-wealth, it was anti-worshiping wealth, anti-serving wealth. Okay, so and he had a lot of rich friends. We hear about him going visiting people in their homes, and they're holding feasts for him and feeding him and his entourage, all the apostles, disciples, and the women who came and helped and so forth. They would feed all of them. These are wealthy men. You couldn't do that in Galilee and in Palestine during the time of Jesus if you didn't have good money and good positions. So he wasn't against that. And he didn't speak that these people are bad people. He did mention that it's easier for a rope to go through the eye of a needle than for a man to enter the kingdom of heaven, or the kingdom of God. Because if you lose focus, on the spirituality, on what got you there, and you become more focused on the wealth and the money and the power that comes with it, you lose that connection. And he saw a lot of people when one of the young men who was just so excited to hear Jesus speak and wanted to join the movement. He told him, he said, I want to join you. What should I do? And there are multiple episodes similar to that. He said, well, leave everything, go sell everything and come follow me. Or leave everything and come follow me. Another guy, leave the family and come follow me. He told one that I don't have, birds have nests, and I don't have a place to put my head on. And he knew that. I mean, that statement when he said, I don't know where I'm gonna lie down and go to sleep. He's a good man, and he was basically saying, good people sometimes don't even have a place to be safe and to spend the night. So he was speaking again in a way against society, and that because society does not treat good people the way it should. So, but if you want to follow me, then you don't know where you're going to sleep, you don't know what you're going to eat. You probably will have no possessions. When he sent his apostles and disciples on missions, he told them, don't take anything with you, because then you become a target for thieves and robbers. And you become attached to these things. Your thinking becomes more about the things you're carrying and the extra clothes you're taking with you and protecting them and so forth. And not until recent history, Dr. Lamsa spoke about it. I heard it often from my grandparents and stories about that old times and Palestine and different areas of the Middle East where robbers were around the corner. The safety was not guaranteed, and even during the Ottoman Empire's time, there were a lot. You just hear it in the language of the people that there were a lot of people who attacked travelers, people who raided cities or towns and stole from people. So when the time that Jesus lived, it wasn't safe times. But and if you think about it, what he's preaching goodness. He wanted to get into that fringe. He wanted to get to the people who were robbing and open their hearts and bring compassion upon the compassion out of them towards other people and include them, bring them in, because they were outlaws for a lot of reasons. Some of them were like the zealots who were chased out of towns because they're no longer they were resisting Rome. And even if they got older and managed to survive that stage of fervor and youth and wanting to fight, they still were not wanted back in their towns. They were they were on the blacklist. They were on the wanted list. So they became their way of living was to go attack travelers. So do you see how Jesus was going at root cause? He was coming at the outcast. He was coming at the governmental system. The story about here, I'll do since I'm in Matthew 5:25 and 26. Try to get reconciled with your accuser promptly. Okay, why? Why? This is when you have a problem with somebody, and he tells you go fix it right away while you are going on the road with him, for your accuser might surrender you to the judge, and the judge would commit you to the jailer, and you would be cast into prison. So what is Jesus warning about here? About the one bad judge, or is he warning about the legal system? The legal system exists to serve itself ultimately. We see that today. We have a ton of jails. We have courts upon courts upon courts upon courts. And do people who end up in these systems, somebody might walk away happy, and most likely the other side, or sometimes many people might walk away unhappy. And you see the law, that the human law, not Jesus's kingdom law. It's not designed to bring in a good world. It's just designed to make us function within a system that's constantly corrupting itself. That's the power of Jesus. So when I spoke last week, and somebody said, I was like, I want to hear the word, not politics. If I came across as I was talking about politics, I truly apologize. I don't believe in politics. And the only time I spoke about those systems is because I see the duality in them. And that duality does not have the same vision of the kingdom. And I know we want to think that this country is better than that country, or this economic system is better than that, or political system better than that. And sometimes it's so obvious that these are the cavalry who's coming to save the day, and these are the bad guys. And in history, there's been that thing. I'm talking here about the Jesus system, which said you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Okay, so I was critiquing the thinking that power and force and weapons and so forth can bring in peace to the world. But somehow as I said, we believe that, and maybe it did give us an opportunity. And sometimes those systems can, I still have faith. Jesus did warn us that badness and bad situations will always exist. I still have faith that even with these corrupt systems, that good people will come in and serve the people, the humanity, where we have a better relationship with our neighbors, with each other, with other nations. And just like I used the prophet Micah, talking about they will have their gods, they'll pray to their gods. I mean, this is a Jewish prophet who believed in the oneness of God, in the great Elohim, or Allah. The same way Muslims believe today in the Allah, the same way that the Christians are supposed to believe in one God, though we have some groups that have three, and so forth. Okay, so imagine that prophet of God, of Elohim, saying, for us to have peace, for us to take our weapons and our swords and make them into plows and start, farming the land and feeding each other, and living in peace and sitting under our tree, where I would pray to Elohim and they would pray to their gods. So he had that enlightened idea. Jesus had that enlightened idea. That's why he did not promote fighting with the Romans like the Zealots were, and the Essenes were, and the different groups throughout history of occupier and occupied want to fight. He knew that the key to peace is in here, in humanity, in the hearts of people. That's all I'm talking about. I'm never supporting a political system. I did that when I was way younger, in my teens, late teens, and then I got slapped on the top of my head, and I woke up, and it's like I saw the corruption. I saw the ideology, and I saw the corruption, and then I saw how it's making me dislike other people. So I walked away from it. I was actually excommunicated from a political organization when I was 16, about 16, between 16 and 17 years old. I was given a get out of here message, and then even my friends were told, do not talk to that guy anymore. So because I saw the duality in that, and I walked away, and I never looked back. And funnily enough, my friends left the organization and stayed with me because they knew I was coming from a good, loving place, and I was trying to make the world a better place. A lot of them left that organization that moment. So even political organization with the hold and the ideology and the brainwashing and all that stuff, they're not strong enough. They can fall apart, and they should fall apart and be replaced by love, be replaced by humanity. And that's why I never say that I would want to see a single person injured in any conflict. whether they're the oppressor or the oppressed, whether they are fighting on this side or on that side. I want to see peace, and I want to go like this and bring it there, not at any price, especially at the price of human life or human suffering. So if I came across that way, I apologize. And I hopefully I'm clear this time that I just want to see love and peace rule. I want to see the kingdom actually vibrate in this world every day. And that's my message today. So I see one question coming in. If you have any questions, please put them there. We usually, Dr. Erico and I usually prepare about half an hour, 40 minutes of talk, and then we would love the interaction. And we, as I said, I'm using a couple questions that came from last time. So don't feel obliged to do questions, but it keeps the conversation going. So the question, let me read it. Okay, the question is the gospel according to John. So the fourth gospel does not have any parables like the synoptic gospels, right? Only passages that come close are John 10:6 and John 15:1, but those are not parables, but rather proverbs, right? In a way, you're right, because again, John was written differently and for a different audience and a different time, and in a completely different way than Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Matthew, Mark, and Luke is where truly the man prophet Jesus lives. And John was the moment the movement had lost Jesus, John wanted to bring it together, and then in many ways, from the beginning, and the beginning is so poetic. John 1 is so lovely, that the cosmic messenger, the Milta being with God and manifesting, and that poem is so beautiful if you are grounded in Jesus. And then it explains how wonderful Jesus is in relation to his sonship to God and our sonship, or our, being children of God. It's lovely when it clicks and you get it. Unfortunately, it's also can be misunderstood, and there are some mistranslations, and there are some concepts that were introduced in the early church and then in the latter church that uses that for all the wrong reasons, to bring in a completely different message than what Jesus was giving us in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So it's a beautiful book if you get it as a follower of Jesus, but you have to be grounded in Jesus first. So that's the only question I have. Thank you for your contributions. Hopefully, Dr. Erico will be with us next week. So send him some healing messages and some strength and energy, so he can get his energy back. He had a very rough night, and he just did not feel that he could do this. Thank you again. I always honor the fact that you spend your time with us. We are one community. Each one of you is a child of God, in the following the footsteps of Jesus. I love my time with you. So go and continue to spread the kingdom. Go continue to spread joy. And until next week, God bless you.